Thank you, President Menace. It's such a privilege to receive an honorary degree from Benedictine College. This is a truly amazing institution, and all of you graduates have been so fortunate to be here to receive your education. It really is a special institution, especially in the modern world. An authentically Catholic college that is committed to the magisterium of the Church. It is further devoted to rigorous scholarship, grounded in natural law, and the best that the Western cultural tradition has to offer. Here in the middle of this great country, faith and reason meet. They flourish together, reminding us all that truth comes from God and that it is truth that sets us free to be what we are called to be as servants of the Lord, imbued with distinctive dignity and worth. Hopefully, graduates, in the years to come, you will remember the extraordinary formation you received here. The diploma you received is not different in degree from that of other institutions, but your diploma and the education it represents is different in kind. I also hope you remember a spirit of gratitude when you think back to Benedictine College. President Minnis, his fellow administrators, and the faculty deserve tremendous thanks and admiration for what they are fostering here. They are nourishing souls that can glorify God through faithful service in the world, and in so doing, they are playing an immeasurably important role in the new evangelization of our church. President Minnis and faculty, thank you. Thank you very much for what you're doing for our world. I am sure that each of you who is graduating today has many reasons to love Benedictine College. You received a wonderful education, you had numerous opportunities to grow in your faith, you brightened each other's lives and those around you in countless little ways, and sometimes in very big ways. These are beautiful and tremendously important blessings for which you should be grateful. I am just as sure that your family and friends who are here today, along with the administration and faculty of Benedictine, are grateful, knowing that you have been well prepared to lead holy and impactful lives. You know, of course, that with these diplomas in hand, the work has only begun. You now face some important questions, and how you answer them will affect not only your own journey towards salvation, but that of others as well. What will you do with your education? How will you use faith and wisdom to serve and love others? What human relationships will you forge, and what communities will you live in and form? When and how will you apply the principles and virtues you were taught here? I can't know the precise answers to those questions that are right for you, but I can offer some observations about how God often calls us into service, and how that in turn might inform your answers to these questions. So I'll start with a story. It's one you may well know because it concerns the man for whom this college was named. Benedict was born into a wealthy noble family at Nursia, Italy around 480 AD. He was sent by his parents to Rome to broaden his studies of law and literature, and his father Euprobo likely expected him to take up a career in Roman government after that. Now, life in and around Rome at that time was not easy. Benedict was born around the time of the fall of the Western Roman Empire. A 16-year-old emperor, 16 years old, named Romulus Augustulus, was unseated in just a matter of months by Flavius Odoacer, a Roman military leader of German origins who was known as the first barbarian king of Italy. Odoacer, who was an adherent of the heretical Arian sect that rejects the divinity of Christ, ruled for about 15 years, when his reign literally fell apart when the Goth military leader Theodoric sliced Odoacer in two amidst an unsuccessful power-sharing arrangement. So you can see why Benedict might have thought that he wasn't cut out for government service. And it wasn't just political instability. In Rome, there was enormous corruption, greed, sexual depravity, poverty, and disease. It caused the young Benedict to depart from Rome sometime between 500 and 510 AD to the small Italian village that is now known as Affile in the Supercini Mountains, about 40 miles from Rome. St. Gregory recorded that Benedict, with a resolute mind only to serve God, first settled with his nurse in a company of virtuous men. He performed his first miracle there, and desiring to escape from the praises of men, he fled secretly to a life of nearly complete isolation in a gloomy valley near the village of Subiaco. It is here that, as St. Gregory noted, Benedict surrendered his life completely into God's hands, becoming a master of virtue and a doctor of men's souls. This isolation with God was not an end in itself, but rather preparation for Benedict's extraordinary vocation to evangelization. Benedict ultimately emerged and established 12 monasteries, living in one of them with a few other men. He was father to all these monasteries, and they served the Subiaco area by relieving poverty, helping the sick, burying the dead, comforting strangers, and relieving people's debts. Importantly, Benedict catechized the pagan communities. He destroyed the temple and altar of Apollo on top of Monte Cassino and converted them into the oratories of St. John the Baptist and St. Martin, establishing his most famous monastery there. Now, eventually, new communities of monks emerged all over Europe, serving the poor and sick, engaging more people to pursue holiness through the Catholic faith, and fostering education and learning. Saint Benedict truly changed the world, a fundamental influence, as Pope Saint Benedict XVI put it. I would go so far as to say that as a result of his rule and how it shaped the Church's influence in the world, he is among the most consequential forces in shaping Western cultural traditions and driving progress in the areas of science, art, agriculture, medicine, literature, and education. So what are we to learn from St. Benedict's life? Where do you go from here? You could, of course, focus on isolated parts of his story where he was secluded. You could conclude that in the midst of today's political and social challenges, we as Catholics should consider the need to separate ourselves very substantially from the broader culture and live simply in the company of a few virtuous souls. You get the picture. On a faraway farm, sitting in an overstuffed chair, bouncing a baby on the knee, holding a cigarette or pipe, and hashing out the finer points of Pope Francis's most recent motu proprio. Now, there's one option, but it's not the only option. You could instead see the bigger picture, which Pope Paul VI reminded us of when he described St. Benedict's order. You could take the cross, the book, and the plow to carry our Christian faith to scattered people. This missionary zeal, not his time of isolation, is the real center of St. Benedict's life. He never ran away. He never ran from something, even when he was departing from the depravity of Rome and later settling in his cave in Subiaco. Just the opposite. He was running toward God, seeking to do God's will. As Pope St. Gregory put it, he wanted only to serve God. Like Benedict, you have to ask God where he really wants you and trust that God will give you what you need to remain holy while there. You have to recognize that he places you in tough situations only to draw you closer to himself. St. Benedict's life also teaches that you always need to be open to something new or different, because that is often where God's call leads. Benedict desired the life of a hermit, but probably never imagined that he would be called to such isolation as a means of preparing himself for something more. After settling into that life, St. Benedict was visited by many people seeking guidance because of his holiness and character, which led him to leave his cave and build the monasteries. But Benedict likely never imagined this calling, and certainly could never have imagined the impact on the world that was its result. St. Benedict's contributions to the monastic life, both inside the walls of the Abbey and in the world, illustrate that we are social creatures and called to evangelize. And specifically, we are called to evangelize beyond those we are most comfortable being with. Saint Benedict's rule recognizes and provides instruction on how to take on the imperfections of those in an immediate family or community. The rule also requires that we embrace and treat strangers, the sick, and the hungry as we would Christ. This requires going out into the world. Saint Benedict did not want his monks to hide behind their monastery walls. He compelled them to go forth. They evangelized amongst the pagans of their day without compromising their own holiness. Indeed, they deepened it. As Pope St. Gregory chronicled, by his continual preaching, he brought the people dwelling in those parts to embrace the faith of Christ. So St. Benedict's life, his full life, is the essence of the Christian life. I certainly don't know what your full life will be, and you probably don't either right now. But whatever it is, wherever it takes you, and whoever you find on your way, evangelization is most certainly intended in your future. Life isn't really all that different than in the days of St. Benedict. We live in a society beset by problems and grave moral decline. Your parents protected you, no question, and I hope you thank them as often as you can. Many of you saw the crisis of the modern world, you didn't like it, and you chose to flee from today's Rome to the virtuous company of Atchison, Kansas. For 4 years, you've lived in a close-knit community of fellow Catholics. You've eaten meals together, lived in dorms together, taken classes together, and for months on end, spent almost every waking hour together. You've had access to great priests, religious, and extraordinarily well-formed Catholic mentors. It has been a boon and a blessing beyond the shadow of a doubt. So some of you will be tempted to find the next sanctuary, especially when confronted by modern-day barbarians, secularists, and bigots. The barbarians are determined to threaten and delegitimize individuals and institutions who refuse to pledge fealty to the woke idols of our age. The secularists are fine with Catholics in the public square, so long as we don't, practice our faith. They want us to draw the curtains at home and keep it in the pews, and it remains to be seen how long they'll accept even that. And the progressive bigots distort who we are and what we believe in, and will go so far as to intimidate or harass us in public in an effort to drive us into professional and social exile. Now, I can understand why you might not want to be thrust into this maelstrom, and I understand why it's tempting to seek only the company of the virtuous. There is a nagging fear that being exposed to the toxic cultural forces of our day could lead you to succumb to them or to be oppressed. But as we are reminded by one of the most profound spiritual writers of our day, Father Jacques Philippe, no circumstance in the world can ever prevent us from believing in God, from placing our trust in Him, from loving Him with our whole heart, or from loving our neighbor. Faith, hope, and charity are absolutely free because if they are rooted in us deeply enough, they are able to draw strength from whatever opposes them. Your time here, like Benedict's time of isolation, has really prepared you well to meet our culture's challenges and to embrace the new evangelization freely, with zeal, and with joy. As Jesus said, your light must shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your heavenly Father. As such, you must not think of the wayward souls of our culture as lost or beyond hope, nor should you abandon them or refuse to come to their aid, especially when they fail to see how endangered they are. Instead, you and I and every Christian must try to lead people back to the right path, the path of faith, hope, and love. Hopefully, we live to see a day when we can rejoice at their return and welcome them back into virtuous company. Now, what this new evangelization has in store for each of you will be varied, sometimes hard to discern, and will likely change throughout your lifetime. But if you, as St. Paul exhorts us, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and give thanks in all circumstances, with a resolute mind only to serve God, be assured that God will give you the wisdom to see what you can do with what you have and wherever he calls you. Thank you, and may God bless all of you on this wonderful, beautiful day.